for those of you guys that spent today, Jerome Maldonado. I know most of you guys have been around for the whole run of things here since the early part of all this, before Rev was even created. And I got started. I've been self-employed almost my entire life. I worked a job at a grocery store when I was 15 years old. It's really the only job that I ever really had. My parents, I grew up in a traditional Catholic family. I went to Catholic school. I was dyslexic as a kid. I was pulled out every day because I felt like the dumb kid. I felt like the dumb kid in school because I got pulled out. But they opened the door and be like, chapter 2 kids. We'd all have to go, well, not all, me and maybe one other kid. And so, and then everybody else would stay in school. So like the public speaking, all that stuff, I hated it because every time I came to my turn to like read in class, I'd rather throw like an eraser at the girl in front of me and get in trouble and get stuck in a corner than read, because I just couldn't read because I was dyslexic and I didn't know what it was. My mom and dad both, but my mom is really the core of it. If you ever meet her, she's 5 foot tall. She is just a ball of just hard work and energy. My parents both grew up extremely poor. My mom comes from a family of 12 kids.
Wow.
My grandpa died when she was 5, and so my grandma struggled with all of them. And so at 18 years old, she gave them 35 cents to take a bus into town, get a job. And so that was, and they packed their suitcase and they moved them out. And then my dad, my grandfather was an alcoholic, and so he wasn't abusive, but my grandma left him, and they grew up real poor. Family of 5. Grew up real poor, and she married an alcoholic that was abusive. And so my dad grew up in that type of household. So my dad he was the second the oldest, but my dad became the father figure for all of them. And so at the age of 16, my dad moved, and he worked at a grocery store and came back, met my mom, and they together built everything that we have. And I get emotional with this because it's, and I don't really talk about this stuff too much, but it's cool because the way when my mom was riding a bus when I was 3 years old, when I was a little kid, and she worked at Levi Strauss in the factory, when I was a little kid. And my dad, I remember when he graduated from college and became an accountant, and we lived in like subsidized housing, like a Section 8 house, they bought, government paid for part of it. And I saw my dad build our home with his own 2 hands, and I was a part of it when I was a kid. And I saw them go from that to where they are today, and they've done extremely well. I'm proud of them. That's why I get choked up because I look at my parents, and they taught us, they go, Jerome, you work hard for everything you do, and you do it right, honestly, And that was our big take from everything, is that you do things right. And I was an edgy kid, and so a lot of where my personality comes from is my competitive nature as an athlete. And so my parents didn't have. And so my parents' philosophy was, we had shit, like everything, like our skateboards, our bikes, everything. Because their philosophy was like, they didn't have. So when I was a little kid, they would give us they'd give us a bike, and they're like, look, we didn't have, you have, We had shit, but it was what we had, And so when we were growing up, we got good on that stuff. And it's funny because when my cousins came, it was just a couple years ago, and he goes, and we grew up real close, like close-knit cousins and family together. And he goes, do you think we could have went pro, like riding bikes or doing skateboarding, or even went to the Olympics, wrestling stuff? Like, you know what? I thought about that so much, and we could have. We were that good at everything we did. And we grew up in an environment that was very competitive. Like all of us were very competitive. And all of us has done extremely, extremely well. But we grew up fighting, We grew up, fist fighting, punch fighting. My wife's always telling me, don't tell people that story. But we did. We grew up fist fighting, punching, and we grew up on the streets. We were like wild dogs, And in a good way. We just had to be home when the light was off. When the lights came down, we had to be home. And if we weren't home by the time the lights came off, you get your ass whooped, Old-fashioned style, and that's just the way we grew up. But I saw my dad, my mom build a good life for us. I still remember being in 4th grade, and they pulled me out of Catholic school for a couple of weeks because my dad didn't know if he was gonna have a job. And they just wanted us to get a good education, you know? That was the biggest thing, just get educated. And so I saw this when I was growing up, and I was like, damn, like he has a job, he's working as an accountant, he can't afford to put us in school. They pulled me and my sister out of Catholic school. Then they said, you know what, we were out of school for like 2 months in a public school. They put us back in Catholic school. And I saw my dad just doing whatever it took to just give us a better life, right? And in about 7th grade, I got a little bit edgy, like all kids, you know, some kids do. I got myself in trouble. From fist fighting, landed up in the D home, which is the juvenile detention center for fighting, back in and out. And never got in trouble for doing anything real bad. My biggest thing was I get in trouble for fighting, you know, for fist fighting. You know, I was in and out of jail, and even in college when we were wrestling, the NCAA came down and they told, if you guys get arrested one more time, you're off the wrestling team. You know? And it was like a sport. I don't think we couldn't go anywhere without fist fighting with somebody. It was just what we did, you know. So we just kind of grew up like that. But it was just that competitive nature of everything that we did, and the one big takeaway, like growing up, was because I was so edgy. I wanted to become successful so bad that when you're trying to do something, you do things that are less than what you would do ethically, you know, as a kid, because you make dumb decisions. And I did stuff like little stuff, you know, little stupid stuff. You bend the rules a little bit. And when I was 23 years old and I had went into network marketing, I was in college, I went into network marketing, and I got really good at sales. It took me 3 years. I was broke. I was traveling all over this country, and I was just doing anything that I could to try to make it work. And I got good in front of the room. I broke through a big shell with that, and I had a repo man on me. They were going to my mom and dad's house. The creditors were calling my parents, and my parents were pissed because this wasn't the way they raised me, right? Like I'd go write a check to pay off a credit card, and then I'd max out the credit card again the next day just so I'd have money to be able to pay my office or whatever it was. And there was a point where I didn't even talk to my parents for like 6 months. I didn't want them to know where I lived because they would have sent them down there to get me, you know? And that's just, and you know, even to a point, my parents made it a point, like even I remember we traveled, and it's just these little things as a kid that you remember. We wrapped up our bathing suits in a towel, and we took the towel home. And my mom made it a point to make us watch it. She wrote a check for the towel in excess of what the towel probably costed, and sent it to the motel, you know, with a little letter, you know. And that was like the examples that my parents instilled in us as kids. So the stupid shit that I did wasn't because of my parents, it was because of just who I was, right? So when about 23, 24 years old, I ended up moving back to Albuquerque. I had 1 year left to finish my degree, and I was about 25 at that time. And so I came back down, and I started opening my own business, and I was doing concrete work, and I kind of did it on accident. It wasn't anything I was going to do. I had a little sales company in Texas because I was living in San Antonio, and I would fly out on Fridays. I fly on Thursday nights, and I work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I get on a plane, I come back, and I take classes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and I was taking like 20 credit hours in 4 days, and I even had to take a couple classes at the junior college just because they won't let me take 20 hours. And I did all that. I ran my business in Texas, and I started a construction company at the same time. My brother-in-law got shut out, his company got shut down for tax evasion, and I was able to qualify for my contractor's license because when I was in college, I'd go sand the houses for him doing drywall. And so his ex-boss, verified my employment. And so I went in, he didn't show up the day we took our contractor's license test. And I did, I passed. And by that time I knew how to sell, and I knew how to market. And I started selling construction projects. And so my dad was an accountant, and he goes, Jerome, he came to me one day, and my dad and I are different in personalities. He's very analytical, very structured, and I wasn't. I was very the opposite, more like my mom. I was just a rambunctious kid. And so we always rubbed each other the wrong way, always. And so I love my dad, we have a great relationship, but I still have a hard time talking to him. Like I call him on the phone, and I don't have nothing to talk to him about because our personalities are so different, right? But what he told me is, he goes, Jerome, he goes, I want to help you, because he was afraid that if he didn't help me, that I was going to get myself into trouble financially. He goes, I'll help you, I'll do all your accounting and stuff for you, but he goes, you have to do things right, all right. If you don't, then I won't help you. And and he did the credit stuff, just everything. And that was like a big piece of it for me. So my whole life, since I was about 24, 25 years old, and I was going through business, I would sit back and I every time I'd get to a point where I was thinking of doing something wrong, right? I didn't know if it was, I'd sit back and go, okay, what would, my dad was right here, right now. Like, would he approve of it or would he not approve of it? And if I'd say, okay, how would he handle it? And that's literally the way I did things forever. I don't do that anymore because it's easy for me now because I've just done things right for my whole career. But it was that really taught me, how to go out and run a business and do it the correct way. And my whole philosophy when I started my construction company back in 1998 was to run a blue collar, in a blue collar industry, run a white collar business with a white collar professional, because I wanted to be able to take money from white collar professionals, right, that I felt had a fluency to pay us. And that was my whole business philosophy. So in 1998, I started a construction company. I was very bold. I went in, we did like $1.2 million our first year in business from nothing, made a few $100,000. I started deploying it. I was doing a lot of different stuff all at the exact same time. I'm literally, self-made from nothing. My parents stopped giving us money from the time that we were like 16 years old. Not that they give us very much money anyways. I mean, I get $7 a week to go for lunch, and if we wanted to use it for something else, we could. And that was it. We had shoes. We get one pair of shoes a year. We get $100 to go shopping with for school clothes at the beginning of the year, and then whatever we got for Christmas and our birthdays, that was it. That's what we got as kids. My parents didn't pay for my college. I worked hard, and I got a scholarship to wrestle in academics. I was a scholar athlete in wrestling and in school. So in spite of being a crazy kid that fought, I was smart enough to get through. And I just worked my ass off to get through school and do everything that we've done. And I was just always budget sensitive. I was real good, like Tyler was talking about, with my money. And so I was able to go through college, had my own dorm room, and I just worked hard, And so everything that I've literally built has been from nothing, from me doing. I've had to fix my credit. I had to do it the right way. I had to go back, pay everything back off, negotiate with creditors, buy shit cash, refinance it, just build everything back up again when I was in my mid-20s. And then I finally figured out what worked for me, and construction just happened to be that thing. I still own a concrete company today. We pour a few hundred yards a week in concrete, and that business still does about $7.5 to $8 million a year in business. I've never wanted to scale it. I've always kept it about that for about the last 15 years. We've been doing about the same amount because my interests have been other places. It's always been in real estate and other stuff. I've tried everything. I've owned a ton of restaurants. I've owned a lot of stuff, beauty salon. I've owned a lot of stuff over the years. And so in 2016, I went through a lot with the recession financially, and I didn't lose nothing. It was a lot of work, was more what it was. I thought I was set up financially where I didn't have to work anymore. And that's when I decided to have kids. And so when my son was born was in January of 2008, and then I was in denial that the recession was going to affect us. And in November, when I was finishing off some big commercial buildings that I was building that were mine, the recession hit and the banks were on my back. We hadn't missed any payments or anything, and so we struggled through all of that. But we got through it, and it took me a few years to get that ball rolling again. I got very conservative. So in 2016, I sat back and I go, you know what? We've got to get bold. And I was already bold through that. I just didn't think I was being bold. I bought a lot of real estate, opened up businesses just to get through it. So that's bold in itself. But I didn't see it that way. I wanted to see my net worth go up. So in 2016, I said, you know what? I've never done partners. And one of the reasons I hadn't done partners is because in early years when I did, I do business with people and the ethics just weren't there. They were taking money, or I was doing all the work, and it was frustrating. And so in 2016, I sat back and said, okay, I've got to figure this out, because I'm never going to scale, and I'm going to work my ass off the rest of my life. I'm going to land up with a heart attack as hard as I was working. And so I made a conscious effort in 2016 to start trying to figure this out. It took me 2 years to really come to cope of how I'm going to put this together. And so in 2018, I did an outreach in late 2017, 18. I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. The first time I ever created a Facebook page was in January of 2018. I'd never been on social media, didn't know who Ty was, didn't know who Grant Cardone was, didn't know nothing. One of my best friends in the whole world, my buddy Rick, he literally shoved a phone in my face to the swimming pool at a resort that I owned up in Calhoun, Georgia. And we were in the swimming pool for the graduation, because I used to lease it to a Christian academy up there in Calhoun. It was an 80-acre ranch that I used to own. And he goes, bro, you gotta watch this guy. He's real current with things, and dude, he's doing what you're doing, but just bigger, man. He's like, you know, and so he literally shoved the phone in my face and was making me watch it. And then I watched it and said, oh yeah, cool, yeah, we're already doing all that shit. I don't know that, you know. Like 2000, I think it was the graduation like 2017, May of 2017. Well, he would just send me the links to Grant Cardone, you know. And so then, like in that November, December, I go, you know what, I'm just gonna see what this guy's doing. I'm gonna poach all his paperwork and I'm gonna do what he's doing, you know. And so I went and I invested a couple $100,000 in Cardone Capital. I got an investor's pass, went to 10X in late January, February for free, and I got to go into the inner circle as an investor. By that, you know, at that time I was probably worth about $20 million, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, I don't know, depending how you evaluate things. And so I felt like I'd done well, you know, and I had, you know, and so I sat back and I met Ty there. That's where I met Ty. I was in the back room, and I just took a liking to him. You know, he was that day. I think he was just on that day in regards to he was just real natural, you know, and just really didn't care. And everybody else was real like real cliquey, kind of cliquey, like, you know, like a little kid. I felt like a little kid at school, like with this little cliquey type atmosphere that I was in. And I had this like, I don't give a fuck attitude. I was like, fuck all you guys, you know, like, I don't care. I done well. I didn't care, you know. I felt like I was one of them. I was like, you know, I'm like one of you guys, like, you know. So you don't want to bring me in, like, screw you, you know. And that's what I really felt, you know. And I took a liking to Ty, so I just went ahead and bought his stuff that day. I went to his house, and I just said, okay, I'm not going to network as much with the people. I'm going to really just network towards the top. And I just felt like at that time I was already in my mid-40s, and I said, you know what, I don't have time for all the bullshit. I need to go straight to the top if I'm going to do this. I don't got, you know, a lot of time to be trying to figure this stuff out. So I was the first one to sign up at his mastermind. I was like, I heard they were going to do it, and I was like, okay, I'm in, you know, here's 25 grand, here's my card. And I was like, I was literally the first person that signed up for it. And so I got to meet Alex. And so through the means of really building a relationship with Alex, is where everything happened. And that's how I became partners with Ty, like even in the real estate, was through Alex. And so Ty was really my first business partner in 2019 through anything that we had ever done. And then if you guys notice today, I got Kyle here. He's my business partner in all of what we're doing, like with our distressed hotel brands, and we're converting offices and stuff like that to multifamily. I got David Carbajal, who I met at Ty's place. Him and his brother-in-law, we became good friends through the means of that inner circle. And so Dave's my general contractor, business partner here in Palm Springs, and everything that we're doing in Palm Springs. Ramez, sitting next to him, I met through Ty as well. And these are all relationships that we kindled through a course of time. And Ramez works for Microsoft still, but he's up in the Seattle, Kirtland area, and he's my business partner. And we're doing a $5 million project together up there, and we're getting ready to embark on about another $30 million project up in Tacoma. And you know, Kyle and I have a $16.5 million project going together up in Phoenix, and we have a $2 million project going in Palm Springs that's real soon here is going to turn into about a $15 million project. And I still run my business at home, and I still run all the stuff for ESR, for e-commerce point real estate with Ty. So the warehouses, I own 1/3 of them with me, Ty, and Alex, and they're my business partners as well. And this was my movement to get in with good people and network. And but I needed people that fell in line with the same scope of business ethics that I did. And so that's what I was looking for when I got into it, was the same philosophies that I was fortunate enough for my dad to teach me, was to be able to find partners like that. So like I've met Ramez's family, like I know where he comes from, you know. I've met David's family, I know where he comes from. I haven't met Kyle's family, but I've met his wife, and I've been around Kyle, his business partners, and everywhere I would go and I bring up his name, everybody would just talk good about him, you know. And so that's how I found my business partners. And so the movement that we're doing now is because I want to retire one day, and I promised that my kids, that when they go to college, I could be there for them, no matter where they live, and I don't want to work my ass off and die of a heart attack. And so my whole business deal now is just kindling these relationships so that we can go out and create something bigger together, you know? And so that's where we are now, and that's how I got to where we're at today.